Nikki. I am a new grad nurse. I just graduated from RN school a few months ago, and I was actually an LPN for about 4.5 years prior to becoming an RN. This is the first video for my channel. I am going to be making videos about nursing, college life, lifestyle, different things like that. So if you like those types of videos and are interested, please subscribe, and let's jump on into this video. So I thought that I would make a video about the things that I wish that I knew before I started nursing school. I know a lot of people are going to be starting school in the next few weeks, or maybe you're thinking about going to nursing school, something along those lines. So I thought having a few tips of things that I wish that I knew before I started my nursing school journey would be helpful to those of you who are about to go through it or are already going through it. So the first tip is going to be there is a lot of paperwork. Be prepared for doing more paperwork than you've done for any other school program or anything else. Really was overwhelming at times, especially when you're first getting started. You are required to have a physical, you're required to get vaccines, you're required to have a TB test, you need to get fingerprinted, background check, drug screen. My RN program also required a dental exam. So there was a lot of things that needed to be done, and it was very time consuming. Especially when I was going through RN school, I had to do all of these things at like the start of COVID because I started RN school in May of 2020. So trying to get appointments for different things was super challenging and very time consuming. So just be prepared for the amount of time that it takes. It's just, it can be a lot, and you got to have all that stuff done before they will let you go to clinicals or lab or whatever it may be. And I think most of the schools are pretty much the same. At least that's how my school was. You had to have all of these things in line before they would allow you to really do anything. So be prepared in the beginning to make sure that you have all of those things done. And if there's any like yearly things that may need to be renewed throughout your nursing school process, like maybe getting like your flu shot or your CPR certification, that type of stuff. Be prepared to get that stuff done and have it submitted on time so that you don't miss out on any time at your clinical location or whatever the requirements might be for your school. So tip number 2 that I wish that I knew before I started nursing school is that it can be kind of expensive. And I'm not saying that in a way to scare you, because, you know, it's definitely very doable. There's a lot of costs that are associated that are not even things that you think of, like tuition or books or something like that. And yes, those things are very expensive, and I'll get into that in a minute. Like all of the things that I was talking about before about, you know, with the paperwork, you have to, you know, have a physical done. You need to have, you know, your vaccines up to date. You need to have a fingerprint scan, drug test, background check. All of those things cost money. So that does kind of add up, and that can contribute quite a bit to the cost of the program. If you have health insurance, obviously that's going to help with the medical aspects, like the physical and the vaccines and, you know, TB tests and all of that. But if you don't, you know, you still have to pay for those things. And then the background check, the drug screen, the fingerprint, like all of those cost money. And I think like the background check was like $100. I can't remember how much the other things were, but it does kind of add up. And then you have your tuition as well, which of course, you know, you'd have to pay no matter what type of program you went to. But it is something to think about because depending on the type of school that you go to can really dictate how much your tuition is. I chose to go to a state school versus a private school. I just felt like that was the best choice for me. It was a little bit more competitive to get into because it had significantly fewer spots, but I was willing to take that risk to pay less money for the tuition, and I felt like it was a better program as a whole. So it was really like my priority choice. I did have to wait a little bit longer because they only have one admission time per year, but that was fine with me. I was fine with waiting a little bit longer, and I was really thankful that, you know, I did indeed get accepted, but it was significantly cheaper for me to go to a state school versus going to a private school. But that's not, you know, what works best for everyone, so you have to decide what is going to work best for you in terms of that. And then you also have your cost of books, which of course you're going to have no matter where you go. Books are expensive. It's ridiculous. It's just something that, you know, you got to pay for, I guess. Any additional supplements that you might need for additional study material, like if you're going to be using UWorld or Kaplan or anything like that, like throughout your nursing school process, those are also an additional cost, and they're not super cheap. They're definitely worth it, but they're not super cheap, so that's something to keep in mind as well. And then you have your uniforms. There's also lab fees. There's supply fees. We got like a whole big like rolling like suitcase bag full of supplies that we pretty much never used because we weren't allowed to be on campus for majority of my RN school experience. But yeah, we did get this really nice bag full of supplies, and it's really great that you have that if you're going to be practicing skills and doing different things like that while you're at school. So it's just something to keep in mind, that it can be a little bit expensive, and to make sure that you financially have, you know, a plan set in place of, you know, either how you're going to pay for it, if you're going to get scholarships, if you have financial aid, different things like that, because there are a lot of scholarships and whatnot that are available. So it's just something that you would have to look into and make sure that you meet the requirements and do all the different things to be eligible for that scholarship. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. The third thing that I wish that I knew before I started nursing school is that you don't have to do all of the assigned reading. And by that I mean you don't need to sit there and read from start to finish everything that they have assigned you for that week or that month or that day or whatever it may be, if that's not how you learn best. For me, that's not how I learn best. I definitely don't retain as much information if I'm just sitting there and reading from cover to cover. I'm not going to be able to tell you everything that I read and everything that I learned because I'm not going to retain all of that. So for me, I used my textbook more as a resource. I needed more information about something. If I needed some very specific information about something, then I would go to my textbook and I would utilize it for that aspect. I would use it to build my notes. I would use it to kind of just clarify different things. But I didn't sit there and just read it from cover to cover because that just wasn't beneficial for me. You only have a certain amount of time, and trust me, there is a lot to do in nursing school. So you have to kind of prioritize what is most important for you and what works best for you in terms of your learning style and how you retain information. So sitting there and reading from cover to cover may not be the best use of your time. The fourth thing that I wish that I knew before I started nursing school was that don't depend on the instructor to teach you everything that you need to know. It's just not feasible. There's not enough time that we spend in class with our instructors for them to be able to teach you everything you need to know to be successful or to be as knowledgeable as you should be. They are going to give you the foundation of the information. They're going to give you those building blocks, and then you are responsible for building on top of that. They're going to give you, I had an instructor in RN school. She always said there's the need to know and there's the nice to know. And the instructors are going to give you that need to know information, and it's your responsibility to get that nice to know information. So that's where those additional resources come into play. So if you go to class and your instructor gives you a PowerPoint and they lecture off that PowerPoint and you take notes off of that, that is your foundation. That's when you're going to use your other resources like your textbook or, you know, YouTube videos, or maybe they have other videos that they provide for you that you can watch. Maybe there's old like a previous classmate that has given you their notes. You can use those to build on top of. There's a ton of different resources that you can use to build up your knowledge base, and that will continue to build as you gain more experience, as you become a nurse, as you go through clinicals. It's just a building process because the human body is so complex and there's so many different things that can happen and go on, and we're always learning new things as in the medical field, as nurses. You know, it's always a learning process. So it's just you're trying to put down that foundation and then you're building on top of it. Just don't depend on the instructors to be the ones that are giving that to you. They're not going to give you everything. It's just not feasible. They don't have the time to be able to do that. Learning how you learn best is really important to make sure that you are understanding your own study style. And that may have changed in nursing school versus how you studied beforehand. But knowing how you learn best is really important so that you're using your study time as effectively and as efficiently as you can. Like I said before, you don't have a ton of time because you're very busy. You're going to class, you're going to clinicals, you have other life things that are going on. So making sure that you're using the time you have to study effectively is really important. There are several different types of learning styles. You could be an auditory learner, you could be a visual learner, you could be a tactile learner, you can be a multimodal learner, which is a combination of the three. I'm multimodal. I definitely use a combination of all three, and it really depends on what I'm doing and what I'm trying to learn. But I know for me, like, auditory is really important. So I would use downtime, like if I was commuting to work or if I was doing something around the house, I would put on the lecture again and I would listen to it over, because then that way I was able to kind of like go over it in my mind a few times, and that really helped me to kind of retain the information. But there are different techniques that I had to learn to use just to help myself study, you know, differently, and, you know, just kind of depending on what I was doing and what I was learning. To kind of have an open mind. So I needed to have an open mind about my study habits. I was a pretty good student pretty much all of my life, and I had kind of set ways of how I would study things. I was a big, like, I would make study guides and go through my study guides, and that was kind of the best way for me to learn all of my material, was to just have it kind of organized and color coded, because I would highlight in my study guides as well, and that was just the best way for me to learn. When I got into nursing school, it was like a whole different world, and I had to take a whole entire different approach to how I studied, to what I did, how I learned. It's really important going into nursing school that you have an open mind about your study processes. It's also important to have an open mind about your performance expectations. Nursing school it's a whole different world, like I said before, and like I said, I've always been a very good student. I got straight A's in all my prereqs, but coming into nursing school, I struggled a little bit. It was hard. I started the RN program in May of 2020, so right as COVID hit is when I started RN school, and I graduated in May of 2021. So pretty much the entire time that I was in RN school, we were dealing with COVID and all of the different things going on with it. So there were a lot of changes happening in our program constantly. I got used to the changes, and having an open mind really did help me to feel more secure in what I was doing. And it made me feel less stressed about the fact that, okay, I'm doing it this way this week, but next week it could be a little bit different. I also had to taper my expectations of myself, just because with everything going on, with all of the changes, with all of the stress, it was very overwhelming at times. And it did get to me. I mean, I'll be honest, like it got to everyone. I mean, I think in the last year and a half, at some point, everything going on has gotten to every single one of us. So going through nursing school and working as a nurse during COVID, because I was an LPN, so I was working as an LPN in the hospital during COVID, it was a lot going on. So I had to keep an open mind about how I thought everything was going to go, how I thought I was going to perform, and just do the best that I could and be okay with that. And that was really important for me. And so tip number 7 of things that I wish that I knew before I started nursing school is to be gentle with yourself. You have these expectations of how you want to do. Most of us who go into nursing school are overachievers. We have very high expectations of our performances, of our grades, of how we're going to do. And if you don't live up to that, it can be devastating. It can be heartbreaking. It can be very upsetting. But that doesn't mean that you're not doing your best and that you're not going to be a good nurse. How you do in nursing school doesn't necessarily equate to the type of nurse that you're going to be. You may not perform exactly the way that you did before nursing school. Nursing school is a whole different beast. It's a whole different thing, like you can't even imagine unless you are going through it. You're going to be going through a lot of different experiences during nursing school. You're going to see things, experience things that you have never dealt with before, and it's okay to not be on top of your game 100% of the time. We all go through it. We all have ups and downs. So just remember that you're not alone and that you just have to give yourself some grace. With not being too hard on yourself throughout the process, it's kind of important to take time for yourself. Self-care during nursing school should be like one of your top priorities. It usually never is for anyone. I mean, we're all just usually so like overworked, stressed out, overwhelmed. Like self-care just usually like drops all the way to the bottom. You're like, okay, yeah, after I study, after this test, okay, then I'll worry about it. But it is so important. There's that old saying that like you can't pour from an empty cup, and it is so true. Like you can't expect yourself to continue to perform at peak levels if you are not doing something to pour into yourself, to build yourself up, to make yourself less stressed. So it's really, really important that you take some time to dedicate to self-care and to self-love and to just relax and de-stress. So make sure that you are putting that as a priority on your list. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be just like, watching a movie or reading a book for an hour that's not a nursing school book, that is, just something fun to read, or going for a walk, or maybe doing a workout, doing something that you're interested in doing, and you will feel so refreshed and feel so much better, and you will probably see an increase in your performance if you do that. Just a little tip from someone who's been through it, like it really does help. Taking time for yourself is really important as well, because nursing can be very toxic. So the 9th thing I would say is be aware of toxic nursing culture. And I'm not saying that everyone in nursing is toxic or that you're only going to have bad experiences, but just be aware that those things are out there, that there are toxic people in nursing, there are toxic instructors, preceptors, just different people out there who may not give you the best experience possible. And that's okay, because you can't expect everyone in life to always be on the same page as you or want the best for you or whatever it may be. I know that that sounds really harsh, but that's just kind of life. There's just people that really aren't that nice, and unfortunately we have to deal with that sometimes. I would say for the most part I had a really good experience. I didn't have a lot of people who I felt were very toxic in my nursing journey so far. but I did on occasion come into contact with a few different people who were. So one of the experiences that I remember, it was on labor and delivery, and I was not excited to be there to begin with. Labor and delivery is not for me. I had no interest in going into labor and delivery. I knew from day one that that was not my jam, is not my vibe. For all of you out there who that's what you want to do, I commend you. That is amazing, and you go out there and you do it, but I could never do it. It's just not my type of nursing. So I was already not super excited about having to go to labor and delivery. I was dreading it a little bit, and I got assigned to this nurse. So usually we would get assigned to a nurse. We'd go up to the floor, find the nurse, have to go introduce ourselves, tell them that, we're their student for the day, and, kind of just go from there. And this was during LPN school. This wasn't RN school. I didn't get to go to labor and delivery during RN school, which I was totally fine with. Very, very happy about. So I went up to this nurse on labor and delivery, and I was like, "Hey, my name is Nikki. I'm your student nurse for today." And she just looked at me, and she looked me up and down, and she was like, "I don't do students. You can go find somebody else to follow around." And I was just like, whatever. I did not let it bother me. I just went and I found another nurse. I had a friend that was on the floor with me. I asked her nurse if I could be with her as well, and she was perfectly fine with that. And I got to see a C-section done that day. I actually had a really good day. I didn't let that person's negativity influence my vibe for the day. I was there to learn, and I was going to have the best experience that I could possibly have no matter what. So that's really important. Don't let other people's toxic vibes influence your day and your learning experience. You only have one chance to be a student. This is your opportunity to learn. You're never going to be back in this position again. So don't let other people take away from the experiences that you could have. So do your very best to try to just move past that negativity, find someone else or do something else that is going to give you the best learning experience possible. And I know that that can be challenging, and it's not always, so cut and dry as okay, well, I'll just go find somebody else, or I'll just go do something else, or I'll tell my instructor and it will be better. So, each situation is a little bit different, but the best advice that I can give about those toxic situations is try to remove yourself from it and don't let it influence you. And then the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is that nursing school is going to change you. So the 10th thing I would definitely say is that you are not going to be the same person that you were when you started the program versus when you graduate as a new nurse. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just nursing school is such a transformative process. We're taught new ways to think, new ways to act and react, and it changes you. There's no other way to say it than you're just going to be a different person. You're going to grow so much as a person during your time in nursing school. There's no way that it can't change you. And it's a change that is supposed to happen, because as we go through life, as we learn new things, as we gain new experiences, we're supposed to grow, we're supposed to change, we're supposed to become the person that we're supposed to become. And nursing school is going to put that change at a pretty quick rate into your life, and you will notice a difference even from semester to semester, because you're going to be learning new things. You're going to be having new experiences, and those things are going to change you. It's going to change you and make you a nurse or a better nurse, or whatever it may be. Being a nurse, being a nursing student, you are going to see things, you're going to deal with things that most people can't even imagine. I mean, especially right now with the COVID pandemic, the things that nurses are going through and the things that we're seeing and all of that, you can't even imagine it if you're not walking through that. And people who are not walking this path with you will never truly understand all of the things that you're going through. And so you couldn't understand it before you went through it, but now that you are going through it or have gone through it, it's going to change you and it's going to influence your life. I had a teacher when I was in LPN school. She always used to say, being in nursing is like being in the mafia. You can never get out because you know too much. And that is the truth. Like, you are going to look at things with a different mindset, different eyes. You're going to watch a medical show and be like, what are you talking about? That's not real. You're going to be, just how you think about things just changes so much. And like I said, it's not a bad thing, because this is what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to grow, we're supposed to change, we're supposed to flower and bloom into these amazing nurses, and I really hope that that's what happens for you. I hope that you found this video helpful and that it had some good insight for you, and I maybe talked about a couple of things that you hadn't thought about and now you have. And if you're thinking about going to nursing school, I would say definitely go for it. It's a wonderful career. Despite everything that you hear going on right now, there are still a lot of wonderful things about it. It can be very rewarding. It can be very flexible. It can be a lot of great things. So I hope that you found this video helpful. And like I said earlier, if you're interested in nursing, lifestyle, college content, then definitely subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments what other types of videos you would like to see, and I will work on trying to make those for you. Bye!